Hey Marquise, how are you? Waiting on people to come in. Don't need a big crowd tonight. Just a handful of people. Wanted to have a little conversation with you all. Hey Ching on Bash, how are you? Looking like the Black Tim Pool. Oh, don't say that. I actually went on Tim Pool's show. When was that? In September, December. Had a lot of fun. They flew us out to DC and got to chat it up with him and his crew. Ian wasn't there, so that was a good thing. Let's see here. Just waiting for a handful of people to come in here. Again, I'm not looking for a big crowd tonight, just a handful of people to chop it up with. I want to try to go live more with just me, more consistently, either going every night or every morning. So we'll see, Monday through Friday. So a couple of things I wanted to talk about. So just waiting for some more people to stroll in and we'll go ahead and get the show started. Let me know if you guys can hear me okay, by the way. I can't really hear anything since I don't have my headphones in, so I'm going to have to make some audio adjustments as I go. So yeah, if you can hear me, just type a yes or something to let me know that you can hear me. Thank you, Jared. Great to be live. I debated whether I'll come live this evening, and I'm here, so just wanted to talk about a couple of things. Let's see. Yeah. Cool. Alrighty. So let's do this. Okay. All right. Okay. So people say they can hear me. Good. So I wanted to come live this evening, and discuss. You see the title here. Men must be greater than the state. I don't consider myself. It's not that I don't consider myself. I know for a fact that I'm not a quote unquote manosphere content creator. That's not my lane. I don't claim to be in that lane. Anything of that nature. I am a married man, happily married man. I'm not trying to figure out ways that I can get with the most women possible. That's not me. And it seems to me that a lot of the guys in this kind of manosphere space is what they do. It's not my MO. I believe in something called Christian ethics, and everything that I say is rooted out of that basis, out of that foundation. And so I'm not trying to basically get myself into one specific avenue of content creation, so that when people hear Chad O. Jackson, they know, oh, you're part of, the manosphere, or you're part of the red pill movement, or you're part of this or part of that. No. Think of me as somebody who is simply trying my best to uplift people and to tell the truth about American culture, American history, and who is basing all of it as best as I can in the Word of God. That's just who I am. But I did want to come live this evening because, in the spirit of looking at how things unfolded over the course of history to bring us to where we are now, I wanted to look at ways in which the state has become God. The state has its own religion, and it's using our tax dollars in order to fund that religion, or the tenets of that religion, the morals and the values that the state says are virtuous. They are in a sense foisting that bill onto you and I as the taxpayer. And I wanted to play a couple of clips and respond to those clips before I get to the crux of what it is I'm discussing with you all this evening. We have a couple of new people, not new, but I guess people who came into the live as I was speaking. Looks like we have Jared Weaver, L Walk. How are you all? Chandra. Is it Chandra Smalley? Thank you for coming in tonight. Let's see here. Are you folks seeing what's going on in Haiti right now? It's a horrific bloodbath. No, I haven't heard about that. What is going on in Haiti? Do tell. Before I get into the topic at hand tonight, I did want to address a question that a few people have asked me via DM over the course of the last couple of days in light of Don Lemon and Tucker Carlson being axed from their respective news organizations. You know, people want to know what my opinion is on it. And my opinion is really that of indifference. I frankly don't care. When you look at someone like a Tucker Carlson, although, you know, he's someone I like, he's someone who I believe is funny, someone who oftentimes hits the nail on the head when it comes to analyzing and covering different things that are going on in American politics, geopolitical things that are happening around the world. When it comes to even addressing some of the cultural things that are going on, I like Tucker Carlson. However, my ideals of conservatism, of faith, isn't embodied in whether Tucker Carlson has a job at Fox News or not. It's just not. The same is true of Don Lemon. Don Lemon is obviously insane. He's obviously someone who is completely wrong on the ideas, who is completely wrong politically, who's completely wrong morally, and, you know, the whole nine, all the way down the list. However, whether or not he has a job at CNN, that's not going to be something that either brings me joy or bring me frustration. Neither of those things are the case for me, because whether Don Lemon is with CNN or not, CNN is going to continue to do what CNN has done. That is to disseminate information that makes you angry, that makes you basically put you in your own way, if that makes sense. That's all these news cable networks do. It's all meant to disseminate information that causes one side of the political spectrum to be angry and upset at the other side of the political spectrum. Meanwhile, the government is constantly making moves that puts itself in a kind of paternalistic state and you in a kind of state of slavery, and it's becoming ever more so. That's legitimately what's happening. And you know, my hat will go off to Tucker Carlson because he has been known to bring the global elitist types to task. He has been known to be very critical of the so-called expert class in their ilk. You know, so I do have to give credit and honor to whom credit and honor is due. But at the same time, Tucker Carlson, who is still getting paid $1.6 million per month for the rest of the year from Fox News, who will certainly land on his feet once his contract with Fox News is over. I mean, he has a voice. He can read a teleprompter very well. He can start a podcast that will go crazy. You know, Tucker Carlson will be fine, right? And so whether Fox News keeps him on or gets rid of him, there's no reason for me as a man in the world with a company and a family to get beside myself over the fact that Tucker Carlson is no longer with Fox News. I mean, come on, let's get real. Let's see here. Hey, Best Life Network, how are you today, sir? Thank you for joining the live. Terminator Joe, thank you for joining the live. He says it's just a financial loss for Fox, and another bot will replace D Lemon. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, it is a financial loss for Fox News, but my point is, if you consider yourself a Christian or a conservative, I feel that if you are beside yourself over the fact that Fox News got rid of Tucker Carlson, then you need to kind of rethink a couple of things. Because if Tucker Carlson is the embodiment of your beliefs to the extent where him losing his job at Fox News kind of invokes this kind of frustration within you, then I mean, frankly, I think that's kind of silly. That's not to belittle people's feelings or anything like that, but there's more important things going on in the world. And Tucker Carlson, he'll be fine. Everybody just chill out. Everybody just calm down. Tucker Carlson will be fine. I promise you that. So, on to the matter at hand. So, those of you who have watched our Sunday show with myself, Chuck Littleton, Blanche Robinson, and Keisha King, the show's called Cutting Through the Culture. And you'll know that oftentimes we drop names. I've been known specifically to drop the name Nikki Giovanni on a number of occasions. Now, who is Nikki Giovanni? Nikki Giovanni is someone who considers herself a revolutionary poet, which sounds kind of gay if you ask me. But anyway, she considers herself a revolutionary poet. When she was a young woman, a young girl, she marched in a lot of the civil rights marches that were going on. She became a young radical. She's a feminist. She's a lesbian. She is a political commentator, the whole nine. She's still alive today. And the reason I bring her up often is because I believe that she, for all of her warts and bruises in terms of her ideology is concerned, as far as her morality is concerned, or lack thereof, in spite of all that, I feel like she is somebody who has been known, as far as I'm concerned, to properly analyze or explain how the baby boomers moved from 1960 to the present hour in terms of their belief systems. Whether she knows it or not, she has been able to accurately explain or describe basically how baby boomers think and how they deviated from the adult society of their youth, and who they are at the present hour. She's been known to do that, as far as I'm concerned. And I have a couple of clips to verify what it is I'm saying. But the reason why she's important to talk about is because, oftentimes those of us who like to nerd out over history and all the things, I can see how the person listening to us, or the spectator, the casual observer, might say, okay, well, you're bringing up all these names, and I guess that's interesting, but what the heck does that have to do with anything? I mean, that's cool to know that, oh, this person was a communist, and they went to Russia and whatever. That's cool and all, but how is make it relevant to what's going on right now? Please help me understand. The reason why I bring up Nikki Giovanni isn't because she's some obscure poet, but because she was a professor of education until recently. And so she's literally, she literally had the job, the role of educating those who were about to go into careers as educators, who are teaching, guess who? Our children, your children, well, not my children, because my children are homeschooled, but you get my point. Here's a person who is equipping many teachers, would-be teachers, with the kind of Marxian, Howard Zinn-esque way of looking at the world. She's educating these educators and then sending them off to then go and recycle the information to America's youth. And so you begin to understand why it is important to talk about these people, not because you just, hate Marxism and thus you want to, in a sense, slander those who espouse Marxist ideology. No, it's important to talk about these people because a lot of them are still alive today, whether you're talking about Bill Ayers, Bernadine Dorn. When you talk about these people, it's because you're getting at the fact that they are still relevant today, in the sense that they have their hooks in individuals who are going to be your future mayors, your future city council members, your future educators, deans, the whole nine. And so it's to that extent that you have to talk about these people, who they are, what they've been up to, what they're up to now, what they believe. Because when you understand all those things, it helps you to better understand how to show up at school board, meetings, how to, in a sense, deconstruct a lot of this ideology that's spreading like wildfire, frankly, like a cancer. Both are destructive, really, but spreading like those things into the municipalities and everything, where we as men need to be on our guard lest we lose our culture and our society to these hollow and deceptive philosophies. And that brings it back to the title of our live this evening. Men must be greater than the state. If we are to be great as men, then we must understand what the state is and who the policymakers and social engineers are who have a vested interest in expanding the state to replace you as a man in the role of society, in the role as a father, in the role as a husband, right? They wish to replace you, to make you redundant, and to make the masculine figure of the state, or to make the masculine figure the state, which is ran by the LGBTs and women and, people who do not have a moral basis that's rooted in the Word of God. That's ultimately what we're getting at. Now, that's not to say that every woman is, doesn't have a moral basis that's rooted in Scripture. It's not what I'm saying. It's not what I'm saying at all. But when you look at the majority of the politicians who are in office right now, many of them, in fact, I would venture to say most of them, do not get their marching orders from their constituency and do not move and operate from the premise that it's incumbent upon them to preserve and save and prolong the constitutional republic. They don't see that as their task at all. Rather, they are, in a sense, mobilized and puppeteered by globalist elitists, by so-called activists whose basis is rooted in Marxism, and their financiers, their donors. That's who they're loyal to. They're certainly not loyal to you. And so as men, rather than complaining about that, the question becomes, well, what are we going to do about it? We have to understand who these people are, because it's to the extent that we understand who these people are that we know how to, in a sense, be 3 or 4 steps ahead of them. And of course, it's true that while we can't fight against this demon on the larger scale, because there's only one of you, right? There's only a handful of us. We can at least stop it from entering into our own homes. We can at least stop it at the local level by being more involved in our school boards, our city council meetings, so on and so forth. We can, when we hear about these groups, because they're very slick how they mobilize, but we hear about these groups, these activist groups, these Marxist groups who are putting together plans to show up to your local school board meeting. You can, if to the extent that you know about these organizations, who they are, how they operate, you can get yourself and a couple of other like-minded men show up to that school board meeting to be a voice of reason, because as the old saying goes, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. And if it's always only those types who are showing up to the school board meeting demanding that critical race theory be taught in our schools, demanding that LGBTQ books be displayed in our libraries, demanding all these things, and meanwhile we as the men who are supposed to be at the gate guarding the city are staying home and sitting on our hands, then guess who will get their way as far as our municipalities are concerned, as far as our schools are concerned? Certainly not you. And so we as men have to be greater than the state. That's what it boils down to. It's plain and simple. Let's see here. Had a couple more people joining us this evening. Louisiana Sister Squad, thank you for joining. Let's see here. Terminator Joe. Thank you for joining us tonight. Jesus is King. Let's see. Got Chuck Victory in here. Broski Bear. Thank you all for joining this evening. Donna Hanson. So yeah, thank you all for joining us this evening. So let's get into this first clip, shall we? Let's see, which one do I want to play here? Okay, so I did want to play this this first clip, which corroborates in part something that I've been saying for a very long time, which is that when it comes to Black America, right, since the end of slavery till the 1960s, Black Americans were entrepreneurial. They were productive. They weren't worried about trying to, be accepted by white people or whatever. Like none of that, like none of the narrative that we are taught and that your children are taught in their history classes by these Marxist types. Like none of that is true. I mean, some of it is partly true, but none of it is true to the degree that they tell you it is, right? You have to understand, it's not so much that these educators at your local schools are trying to be nefarious with what they're teaching your children. Again, it's more the case that they themselves were educated by the Nikki Giovanni types, by the Marxist types in colleges. And the educators at your local school learn to trust the professors at their colleges. Many of these educators at your schools don't even have children themselves. And so they can only teach you or your children what they themselves learn. And so I'm not even blaming the teachers at your schools as much as I am the professors who are educating the educators who do have an agenda, right? And so you begin to understand. So Nikki Giovanni, again, somebody who is more of a strategist, somebody who is a nihilist in the sense that her ideology is destructive. And you'll see what I'm talking about as we get further along. But she does corroborate something that I've been saying for a very long time, which is that when you look at the trajectory of Black families in America from the end of slavery till around about the 1960s, one of the things that you saw far and wide was this kind of entrepreneurial spirit where they weren't sitting around begging for a handout from white folks. They were actually making their own way. That's what was happening, right? However, groups like the NAACP, who were connected to more established publications and historians, it was that narrative that we are taught today more so than the narrative of the common folks who were actually making their own way in America. And so we learn about history not through the lens of the common folks, but rather through the lens of the NAACP, who Manning Johnson said went out of their way to create race issues that they might use those race issues as fodder to raise funds with. That's what happened. What Nikki Giovanni says is that her generation didn't go the entrepreneurial route that their fathers and grandfathers went. They chose instead to be rebels. They chose instead to be civil rights activists. Again, this is something I've been saying all along, but you get to hear it now from Nikki Giovanni herself. If I can find the clip. What the heck did it do that for? Come on, bro. There it is.
Community is proven. I mean, that's Detroit. There's one thing that the Black community has proven. I mean, that's Detroit. That's Tulsa, Oklahoma. We have proven that we are good business people. Our generation was not good business people. That's not what we did. We were good civil rights people. But now the kids that are coming are good business people again. You look at Russ Simmons, you look at Puffy, they are not just doing their entertainment thing, they are also doing restaurants. Puffy's got a restaurant here. They're also doing clothes. They're also expanding and being able to hire people. They're being able, you look at Queen Latifah, she started off, she's reading a little poetry. She goes to Hollywood. She's helped to change Hollywood. Mm-hmm. And so it's been wonderful to see what the kids have done because they've changed it. Because if the rappers can put 5,000 seats, they can put bodies in 5,000 seats, then Hollywood has to say, now what kind of movies do we make to make this work? Mm-hmm. And it works, it's important. Somebody will say, well, Nick, I don't like Fat Beach. You see what I'm saying? Because it's not made for you. It's made for young people. You all are too old. If there's one thing that the black community has proven, I mean, that's Detroit, that's Tulsa, Oklahoma. We have proven that we are good business people. Our generation was not good business people. That's not what we did. We were good civil rights people. But now the kids that are coming are good business people again. You look at Russ Simmons, you look at Puffy, they are not just doing their entertainment thing, they are also doing restaurants. Puffy's got a restaurant here. They're also doing clothes. They're also expanding and being able to hire people. They're being able, you look at Queen Latifah, she started off, she's reading a little poetry. She goes to Hollywood. She's helped to change Hollywood. And so it's been wonderful to see what the kids have done because they've changed it. Because if the rappers can put 5,000 seats, if they can put bodies in 5,000 seats, then Hollywood has to say, now what kind of movies do we make to make this work? And it works, it's important. Somebody will say, well, Nick, I don't like Fat Beach. You see what I'm saying? Because it's not made for you. It's made for young people. You all are too old.
Okay. Am I muted? Testing. Okay, I don't think I am. But yeah, so a couple of things. If I'm muted, can you guys hear me? For some reason, the microphone went blank whenever I played that video, so I don't know if I'm audible. Anyway, I'm just going to keep talking. So a couple of things in that video. She basically echoes one of the and the thing is like, okay, I'm a right-wing Christian conspiracy theorist, right? Okay, somebody said good. Cool. So I'm a right-wing Christian radical conspiracy theorist, right? So if you listen to what I say, you have to kind of take it with a grain of salt because I have a conservative capitalist agenda, right? However, Nikki Giovanni, she's a good liberal, right? She's someone who just wants everybody to be taken care of by the state. She's very virtuous in that regard. Okay. And you should trust what she's saying when she tells you that her generation, the baby boomers, who were themselves, not all of them, of course, I'm not generalizing, but to the extent that you have baby boomers who decided to picket, who decided to defy, and many of them did defy, because if you listen to the records, if you listen to the testimonials of individuals who themselves were young people marching in these protests, they'll tell you, and I know this firsthand because they told me, they'll tell you that their mothers and fathers did not want them marching with Martin Luther King, did not want them marching in these marches and these pickets and these protests. They didn't want them having anything to do with what Martin Luther King had going on, what Black Panthers had going on. They didn't want them to have anything to do with that at all. But many of them chose to defy their parents. And so not only did they defy their parents with regard to whether to march or not, but they defied the traditions and customs of their parents, including that of being entrepreneurial. She just told you. Right? You have to take my word for it. I'm a right-wing conspiracy theorist. Take her word for it. She's a good liberal, right? And she's telling you the same thing that I've been saying. She told you, historically, we've been entrepreneurial. We started businesses. We knew how to run businesses. She mentions Detroit. She mentions Tulsa. She said, my generation, we didn't know how to or how to do business. We chose to defy our parents. We said that they were capitalist pigs. We wanted to be Marxist revolutionaries because capitalism is destructive and imperialist. Marxism is good and wholesome and virtuous. We chose to go the Marxist route, right? But take notice of what she says about the generations that succeeded hers, our generation, right? I'm a millennial. She says that the young folks today are business owners. And who does she bring up? Of course, Puff Daddy and Snoop Dogg and others. She says, yeah, they're rappers, but hey, they're also, clothing designers and they sell drinks and all the things. And there's something very nuanced about what she's saying, because the typical Black business owner prior to the 1960s, they had plumbing companies and electrical companies and banks and hotels and fine restaurants. And, they had jobs and companies and businesses that were providing a service that everyone could use, and they still had their dignity intact. They weren't walking in this kind of contradiction where on the one hand they are, you know, what we see today with the rappers who on the one hand are preaching capitalism, or not capitalism, sorry, let me rewind, who on the one hand are teaching Marxism and talking about and celebrating Marxism in a roundabout way, not so much explicitly, but in a kind of indirect way, celebrating that in their music, especially a lot of these conscience rappers, right? They celebrate and admire Marxism in their music. On the other hand, they have a business. I mean, make it make sense. So you can't compare what, or you can't say that what today's, or a lot of today's, again, I'm not generalizing, but you can't say what a lot of today's hip hop artists, AKA business owners, are doing in the way of owning businesses is the same as what they were doing prior to the 1960s, because what they're doing now is a contradiction. What they were doing prior to the 1960s, it was not a contradiction. And another thing to take note of is she is, in a sense, giving a kind of stamp of approval for the rapper being at the upper echelon of black culture in terms of who our young folks must aspire to be if they want to be somebody. I don't know if you caught that, but again, she's the first people she brings up prior to the 1960s, prior to her generation of business owners. The people that she brings up are rappers who can fill seats at her concerts. Again, her words, but at the same time sell a t-shirt, but at the same time sell a jersey, but at the same time, you know, start a restaurant in Atlanta, whatever the case may be. Of course, you're talking about folks like T.I. and others. But my point is, when you have the rappers who are at the upper echelon of black culture being the people who this professor says you must aspire to be if you want to be somebody, you can't help but take into consideration the lyrics of that person. So not only are you taking on this kind of lust for money that these rappers talk about in their music, but you're taking on as well a whole slew of other mores and ethics that is being taught in their music, which is to say none at all. So hopefully that made sense. Let's see here. Wanted to play this other one for you all. So another thing that you should notice about Nikki Giovanni, since, you know, we're on this whole rapper bent, right, is that she was a huge Tupac fan, In fact, after Tupac was killed via black on black crime, she wrote a poem, and the poem was the cringiest thing I've ever heard. But again, pay attention to this clip I'm about to tell you or show you all, and kind of read between the lines. Like, look at the whole thing holistically, and let's talk about it after the fact, shall we?
This generation mourns Tupac. I just cry, as all mothers cry, for the beautiful boy who said he and Mike Tyson would never be allowed to be free at the same time, who told the truth about them and who told the truth about us, who is our beautiful warrior. There are those who wanted to make him the problem, who believed that by silencing Tupac, all would be quiet on the ghetto front.
So do you get the sense from what you've heard so far? And again, this is just an actress who is reciting the poem that was written by Nikki Giovanni. But do you get the sense that in the poem, she's kind of depicting Tupac as a kind of messianic figure? Am I using that word correctly? But yes, she's depicting Tupac as the Messiah. Listen to the language that she uses. I'm going to back it up just a couple of notches.
Them and who told the truth about us, who is our beautiful warrior. There are those who want.
He told the truth about them. He's told the truth about us. He is our beautiful warrior. Tupac, the same young man, the same rapper who wrote a song called "Hit 'Em Up." That guy, he's our beautiful warrior. Okay.
To make him the problem, who believed that by silencing Tupac, all. There are those who wanted to make him the problem.
There are those who wanted to make him the problem. Like, what exactly do you mean? Tupac was a very unstable man, a very angry man. He was a gifted artist. I'm not taking away from his artistry. But again, if you listen to his music and listen to the lyrics therein, it wasn't life-giving music. It just wasn't. It was destructive music. It was degeneracy on display. He promoted thug life. He had thug life tatted right across his chest. He took great honor and pride in being a thug. And so for me, when I hear someone like Nikki Giovanni in this poem saying that they wanted to make him the problem, like, who do you mean by they? When you say they wanted to make him the problem, the fact of the matter is, what else? How else do you explain the fact that in the 90s, gangster rap became all the rage? People like Ice-T, people like NWA, and all the others who were basically peddling pure poison to America's youth. And we're supposed to be okay with that. And to the extent that somebody criticizes that, people like Nikki Giovanni want to kind of flip it around in this kind of gaslighting kind of way and say, oh no, you're the problem for complaining. Tupac is just here to tell the truth. This is a clear-cut example of what the Bible talks about when it says they call good evil and evil good. There is no other way to explain this at all.
Who believed that by silencing Tupac, all would be quiet on the ghetto front. There are those who testified that the problem wasn't the conditions, but the people talking about them. They took away band, so the boys started scratching. They took away gym, so the boys started breakdancing. The boys started rapping because they gave them the guns and the drugs, but not the schools and the libraries.
Okay, Cap. And again, this poem was written by Nikki Giovanni. She said they, again, who is this they that we're talking about? Be confident and bold about, who the they is. Tell us who they are. They took away libraries. They just came into the hood and just took the library away. And they took away the books. And they gave you instead a gun and crack to shoot each other and to sell. Nikki Giovanni, again, a professor of education, wrote this poem, and she believes it, and it's celebrated. But is it true, Nikki Giovanni, that they took away the libraries? Is it true? How about we look at your own life to determine whether that's true or not? I'm going to let the clip keep playing because I actually edited this together, and I want you to pay attention to what Nikki Giovanni herself is about to say. Mind you, she just said that they took away the libraries, right? Okay, let's let it keep playing.
I do remember my first librarian, and I must have been 12 or 13 years old, and her name was Mrs. Long. As I got older, I grew up in segregation, but as I got older, I wanted to read The Origin of the Species because it's something I've always been interested in then.
Okay. So they didn't take away the library. You had a library. You could still, not only did you have a library during segregation, in your words, not only did you have a library, but you remember the librarian's name. but yet you want to write a poem and expect me to believe that black folks don't have libraries. Make it make sense. And so you're trying to blame gangster rap on the fact that they took away the libraries, took away the books, and gave these kids crack and cocaine and guns. It's as my good friend Blanche says, blackness means not taking responsibility for your own actions. It is a staple of blackness that you blame anything and everything you can to evade and circumvent having to take responsibility. This is a clear-cut example of that. To the extent that an intellectual, a professor, can lie to your face and tell you that the reason why we mustn't hold black boys, and let's not get it twisted, these aren't black boys we're talking about, these are young black men, who's trying to convince you that we mustn't hold young black men accountable because they, whoever they are, took away the library books, the libraries, and gave you crack, cocaine, and guns instead. Let's see another, shall we?
Talk a little bit about him at that conference. So many young people really don't know much about Hrap Brown. They didn't see him.
Hrap Brown is the reason that we talk about rapping, because he rapped. And he would do that thing with his...
So again, rap, right? She has this love and this lust for rap, and she's all of 80 years old. And of course, she's talking about Hrap Brown, a thug, a criminal. This is what he was. I'm not trying to make fun of him. I'm not trying to be ugly. This is exactly what he was, a thug and a criminal. But again, she's telling the truth about who he was with regard to where rap came from and all the things. And it goes back to a live that I've yet to get into about was there ever a kind of golden age of hip hop where the content of the hip hop was positive, was life-giving, was encouraging, was edifying? Was there ever a golden age, a golden era where the top 10 songs on the hip hop charts, where the majority of those top 10 songs on the charts were life-giving, were rooted in ethics, were rooted in productivity, were rooted in what we can universally construe as decent morals? Was there ever a golden age? The answer is no. Whether the source is, what young hoodlums on the streets of Brooklyn, whether the source is Hrap Brown, whatever the case may be, it doesn't matter. The fact is, there was never a golden age of hip hop where it was positive. That just doesn't exist. Hrap Brown was a lunatic, a criminal, a Marxist, an atheist. That's who this man was. Nikki Giovanni credits him for the emergence, the birth of rap.
This young brother, he would do that because he's from Alabama, got that brogue. They shot Rap. I mean, you remember that. And they were going to kill him, do what they did. They were going to lie and put him in jail. And it's a loss because Rap is one of the best thinkers of his generation, and that's reality. So you
Is he though? Is he though? Because the thing is, again, his thoughts were essentially not his own. Don't get it twisted. His thoughts were essentially not his own. When you look at his, and this is why I wish I had Chuck on this evening, but he has to work and all that good stuff. But when you look at the education of men like Hrap Brown, when you look at their mentors, when you look at where they gleaned their ideas from, you'll realize that they were one of many in a long agenda to infiltrate Marxism into Black America and into the Black ghettos. He's part of a long line of that agenda. And so with that being the case, you can't sit there and tell me that he was one of the greatest thinkers of the boomer generation when I know better because I know the history. I mean, you can lie to the young kids who are coming into colleges and universities, who were educated in the public schools, whose parents didn't take the time and effort to educate their children, to show them the world, to show them books, to introduce them to John Locke, and to introduce them to John MacArthur, to introduce them to Vodi Bakum, to introduce them to the people who can talk about the history in an authoritative way, to talk about Marxism juxtaposed to fundamental Orthodox Christianity, who are not confident in their God who created the earth in 6 literal days. Because the fact is, if you can't trust that God created the earth in 6 literal days, like the Bible says, how can you trust him in any other respect? How can you trust Christ if you don't believe what God said in the beginning? How can you believe stuff that happened later in the Bible where you don't believe what happened from the inception, right? And so, with all that being said, because our kids are growing up in America's public school system, which is systematically teaching our children that God doesn't exist, and when you look at the state of parenthood in our country, where we have been, in a sense, indoctrinated to lack the confidence needed to stand bold in terms of how we are educating and teaching and training our children, rather than standing confident in the face of the so-called expert class, rather than staying confident in the face of the propaganda machine, the leftist ideological propaganda machine, rather than standing confident in the face of what's coming through the television screens, whether it be through Disney or Nickelodeon or what have you, rather than staying confident and being an authoritative figure in the lives of our children for fear that, well, I don't want to indoctrinate my kids. Meanwhile, your kids are literally being indoctrinated by the world. And once again, as these kids come of age, they go off to college, they come into professors like Nikki Giovanni, what do you think will happen? And so what they're doing, these professors, once your kids go to these college, what these professors are doing is they're giving credence to the likes of Hrap Brown, trying to convince your kids that he was a great thinker. All the while, the man was an empty suit, a puppet, an angry young radical, atheist, nihilist, lunatic, criminal. These professors are telling you that they are the good guys. Che Guevara, Fidel Castro, Joseph Stalin, Leon Trotsky. They don't have anything but positive things to say about such people. Mao Zedong. Again, they don't have anything but positive things to say about these people. That is who is educating your children once they get to college. When your boys go to these colleges, they are being systematically emasculated. They're being told that they're toxic and that their masculinity is toxic. And so when they're faced, when those boys become fathers, and they're faced in their own household, in their own domain, with the kind of propaganda that basically emasculated them from the time that they were a boy. When you're a man and you're faced with that propaganda in your own household through the television screen, through what their children are learning in the school, how can such a man boldly speak up against those things lest he lose his own family? How can that happen? Again, they have to be equipped, and equipped with the word of God, equipped with knowledge and wisdom, equipped with confidence. They have to be equipped. Again, lest they fall prey to the likes of people like Nikki Giovanni. But let's keep playing the clip and see what else she says.
You're very sorry that we, and I'm sorry about prison, period. It's a bad idea getting worse. It was a bad idea when it was a new idea. It's a worse idea now that it's an old one. And I hate that we are privatizing prisons, therefore guaranteeing that we're going to put people in prison. And we're doing a really vicious thing with the middle class.
She said that prisons were a bad idea. Again, professor of education. I mean, she's retired now, but again, you can rest assured that there were other people who shares her mindset, who shares her way of thinking, who swept in and took her spot, took her tenured spot. And there's a whole sea of other professors who believe the same exact thing, who are teaching your college educated kids that prisons are a bad idea. What? Prisons are a bad idea? The place where we lock people up for committing purposefully criminal activity in society? How can you have a peaceful, sustainable, safe society if you don't have prisons? If you don't have a way of punishing? And that's the thing, like, y'all don't even use the word punish anymore. Whether it comes to grown adults who commit crimes or whether it comes to your own children who act up and misbehave and talk back and who go out of their way to create destruction in your household. We don't even use punish to explain how we discipline our own kids when it comes to them acting up. We've gotten away from that word. Why? Because we lack confidence in truth. We lack confidence in what's right. We've been taught to call good evil and evil good. There's words that we need to bring back to the English language, punishment being one of them. Shame being another one of them. Respect being another one of them. Decency being another one of them. There's words that we need to bring back to the English language that have been beaten out of us by these global elitist types, these Marxist types, these social engineers who wish to fashion society in their own image, which is very concerning because when you look at their image, when you look at what they believe, when you look into their eyes, you find them to be very cold, very soulless, just dead, angry, manipulative. I can go on and on and on. That's what I see when I look into these people's eyes. And I've been close to some of these people, not close in terms of friendship, but close in terms of proximity. These people who are policymakers, who advise state and local governments on regulations they must pass, which in the end advances their own power and usurps yours as a free American citizen. I've seen these people. I've listened to how they speak and how they move. They lack basic moral values. And again, they wish to shape society in their own image. And it's these types who have worked listen to Eric Mann, for example. Eric Mann, who is the father of Black Lives Matter. There's a video of him, you can find it on YouTube, where he says that language and rhetoric and slogans are a big part of what we do. When you look at, when you read Leon Trotsky, who was a Soviet strategist, he said the same thing. Slogans, rhetoric, language, it's wildly effective when it comes to propaganda campaigns. Walter Lippmann, he wrote the book called Public Opinion, an advisor to many politicians, a journalist for the better part of the 20th century. He talked about how slogans and rhetoric are a huge propaganda piece. Taking words, redefining them, making certain words taboo, or trying to work those words out of human consciousness of Western consciousness. We've done that with the word punishment, which has been huge for the so-called criminal justice reform folks, which criminal justice reform is merely just a sophisticated way of saying open up all the prisons. Don't get me wrong, there are a couple of those who are criminal justice activists who all they want is to see is due process confined to the edicts of the Constitution. There are people who are criminal justice reform activists who want to see due process confined to the edicts of the Constitution, and I commend them for that. However, for the rest of them, they couldn't care less about the Constitution. For them, criminal justice reform is open up all the prisons. Prisons are bad. Prisons are a bad idea. You heard Nikki Giovanni just say it. And so, yes, I do believe we should bring back punishment. We should get comfortable with using the word punishment, because if you commit a crime, especially on purpose, if you commit that crime, then the net result should be punishment. And that should start in the home. It's how we make our children decent people when they come of age. By disciplining them first and foremost. What does it mean to discipline? Discipline and punishment are not interchangeable words. Discipline means instructing your children. Discipline means being firm with your children in terms of what's to be expected of them. Discipline means correcting them verbally, not yelling, but just, correcting them verbally when they make mistakes and having grace. But discipline is huge. Responsibility is another word that comes under the umbrella of discipline within the framework of the household. But also included under that umbrella is punishment. Punishment is not interchangeable with discipline. It is merely an aspect of discipline. The idea being, once your kids come of age and they go out into the world, they are better equipped to navigate the world because they were disciplined from the cradle. But the fact is, culture has so skewed what we think of when we think of, how we operate when we think of what the role of a parent should be in 21st century Western culture. Let's get back into this clip, shall we?
In prisons, therefore guaranteeing that we're going to put people. You're very sorry that and I'm sorry about prison, period. It's a bad idea getting worse. It was a bad idea when it was a new idea. It's a worse idea now that it's an old one. And I hate that we are privatizing prisons, therefore guaranteeing that we're going to put people in prison. And we're doing a really vicious thing with the middle class, which, again, my generation, since we all went to jail, everybody went to jail. But now the middle class is like, I didn't go to jail, and so they don't want to be bothered with the brothers and the sisters who are in jail, and that's a shame, because the people are in jail because, you happen to be there. Those people need to vote. Prisoners need vote. They need all of the rights and responsibilities of citizenship so that they can rejoin us. It's so important that we rethink.
Can you imagine this woman being a president or being seriously in charge of politics? I mean, she's already done enough damage as professor. But could you imagine her in a position of lawmaking? Just utterly destructive. And you don't necessarily have to breathe a sigh of relief that she's not, because we are already in a place where people like her who share her mindset are in positions of DAs, are in positions of attorneys general, are in position of mayors and city council people. People like her are already in those positions. She's one of many in this hegemony of thought and ideas who are, again, systematically destroying Western culture, Western society, who are unraveling what has been set forth by our founding fathers. You heard her just say that prisons are a bad idea and then proceed to say that we should, in a sense, give prisoners the right to vote, all these different rights that essentially extracts any degree of punishment from the prison experience. That is, in effect, the, again, net result of her ideology, of her ideas. It goes back to the word I used earlier, destructive. Her ideas are destructive. She's considered a public intellectual, a poet, right? But if you listen to what she's saying, you'll see that what she's saying is destructive. I'm not inspired by what she's saying. I don't think that what she's saying are good ideas. It's not even a matter of what I think. Again, would you want to live in a society that she's explaining? Would you want to live in such a society? Would you want your children to be raised in such a society? But yet people like her get tenured. People like her get book deals. People like her score jobs at news organizations where they're tasked with disseminating information to the masses. They get tasked and rewarded with these jobs of broadcasting, which I don't know if you all know this, but the word broadcasting hasn't always been a media word. It didn't start out that way. The origins of the word broadcast is to spread seed with the intention of that seed to grow. And it's kind of ironic how we use that word today to explain one who disseminates information to the public. Planting seeds, spreading seeds. Seeds of what, you ask? Seeds of division. Seeds of destruction. Seeds of envy and covetousness. Seeds of rapture. Not rapture. What's the word I wanted to use? I forget the word I wanted to use, but you get my point. These are the seeds that these kind of people are spreading, are broadcasting.
Of citizenship so that they can rejoin us. It's so important that we rethink. It's so important that the black middle class quit being afraid of being black.
Mm-hmm. Amen. Mm-hmm.
So that's a very strange thing to say after you just said that you believe that all the prisoners should be free and giving all these freedoms and all these things. It's a very strange thing to then say abruptly that it's a shame that black people or the black middle class are ashamed of being black. So let me get this straight. You're trying to convince me that being black is one and the same as being in prison? Look at how many people are in this audience, by the way. They're clapping, they're nodding. Just empty drones, just going along with nonsense spewing from the mouth of this woman who's essentially brain dead. And again, I'm not saying that to be ugly. I'm just saying that to the extent that Nikki Giovanni is a person who has utterly embraced destructive ideology. And it's to that extent that I say she's brain dead, because a person who genuinely uses the brain, which is a gift from God, the mind is a gift from God. It's one of the many things that sets us apart from animals. But rather than utilizing that brain for life-giving purposes, rather than using that brain for productivity and for what is good and what is true and what is honorable, she's completely abandoned her brain to that which is destructive and evil and wicked and demonic. And so it's to that extent that I say she's brain dead. But that fate isn't exactly sealed. All she has to do is repent. And God can redeem that which is dead. He's merciful to do it. She's still alive. She still has time. But up until this point, all she's broadcasted was just evil and wickedness. She was one of the people who helped usher in feminism into Black womanhood. Nikki Giovanni did that. Not single-handedly, of course, but she was a huge part of it.
Most people need to vote. Prisoners need vote. They need all of the rights and responsibilities of citizenship so that they can rejoin us. Yes. It's so important that we rethink. It's so important that the Black middle class quit being afraid of being Black.
Amen.
So being Black, according to Nikki Giovanni, means believing that punishment shouldn't be a thing, prison shouldn't be a thing. And her beef with the Black middle class is that the Black middle class upholds ideas of meritocracy, Western ideals, Christian ideals. That's her beef with the American Black middle class. And she believes that tapping into your Blackness means believing that there should not be a such thing as punishment. There should not be a such thing as prisons. Just utterly disgusting. Do I have any more from Miss Nikki Giovanni? Okay, I covered the Tupac one. I covered that one. So, again, talking about Nikki Giovanni isn't a mere attempt to talk about this obscure person to show you that I know something. Again, it's important to talk about her and people like her because it's her work, it's her doing, and people like her who are actively teaching tomorrow's leaders at our colleges and universities. And so it's important to know what they're doing and how they're doing it. Because people like her, again, are making policy. And so, I mentioned earlier that, we as men in particular are tasked with the role, the oftentimes burdensome role of sustaining, prolonging, protecting, encouraging our communities. That's our role. That's not the liberal feminist young person's role. That's our role as men. Many of us, unfortunately, have punted that responsibility. Many of us, in pursuit of comfort, have completely given up the will in that regard. But it is our role. And unfortunately, over the course of the last century, what these leftists have done is they have convinced you, Christian men, that you are running afoul with the Constitution by daring to allow your faith to inform how you operate within your civic responsibilities, with how you vote, with the kind of mayor you will be, or city councilman you will be, or senator you will be. They said that you are running afoul with the Constitution. And what they've done is they've started these organizations, whether it be the ADL, whether it be the ACLU, whatever the case may be. They started these legal organizations to go after you if you dare try to give any remnant or relic or any kind of thing that even hints at you allowing your faith to inform how you engage in your civic responsibilities. And they told you that there should be a hard separation between church and state. This is what they told you. And what they did after the fact was they covertly ushered in their own religion into the state, their own secular humanist religion into the state. And it's that religion that is dictating society today. And not only is that religion dictating society today, you are paying for it. Your tax dollars are paying for it. The ideals, the virtue, the values, I'm not even going to use the word virtue to explain what they're doing because there's no virtue in it at all. But the values, the beliefs that they deem as notable or as, where are my words this evening? That they deem as noble, you are paying for with your tax dollars. I wanted to play for you all this evening a segment from a news organization here in Texas, a news program called the Texas Standard, which is part of I don't even know why I'm losing all my words this evening, but it's part of PBS, right? The government funded news broadcast. And I was listening to the radio and I heard this segment. I thought it was very interesting, but it goes along with what I was talking about earlier, which is that they have established their religion within government and how we are paying for it. So here's a little bit of what that sounds like.
Elena Rivera of KERA reports on a North Texas program creating community support for new
Turn that down some.
parents.
Is that echoing when I play it? That's way too loud. Let's see. Okay, this should work.
Elena Rivera of KERA reports on a North Texas program creating community support for new parents.
On a breezy Tuesday afternoon in April, a group of women are gathered around a small table in a brick house in Fort Worth. Missy Wilder passes out handheld plastic mirrors in blue, white, and pink.
If I celebrate me, I can make it through the week. I can make it through anything as long as I'm celebrating myself. And so that's what I want us to do today is think of words that will help us to celebrate ourselves, right?
So I don't know if y'all caught this. I want to play it back one last time because I didn't hear it. I don't know if you all heard it, but okay. So listen closely to what they're saying. Let's give this another try.
Elena Rivera of KERA reports on a North Texas program creating community support for new parents.
On a breezy Tuesday afternoon in April, a group of women are gathered around a small table in a brick house in Fort Worth. Missy Wilder passes out handheld plastic mirrors in blue, white, and pink.
If I celebrate me, I can make it through the week. I can make it through anything as long as I'm celebrating myself. And so that's what I want us to do today is think of words that will help us to celebrate ourselves, right?
She directs the university's Healthy Start program. It's one of 5 federally funded initiatives in Texas designed to improve health outcomes for people during pregnancy. Black women are 3 times as likely to die from a pregnancy-related cause than their white counterparts.
So the reporter just said that this is a federally funded, which is another way of saying that you and I are paying for it, a federally funded organization for new mothers, right? And you heard the director of said organization saying, the first thing I want us to do is celebrate ourselves, right? Doesn't that have very religious style kind of rhetoric to it? Doesn't that kind of have a religious tinge to it? A kind of cult-like tinge to it? So our government is funding organizations for new mothers talking about we need to celebrate ourselves. In the name of what? In the name of blackness? Like, what are you saying? I mean, because half a century ago, you told us that it was wrong for us to to do similar things with religious organizations, with Christian organizations. And then here you are basically leading a kind of chant with federal tax dollars, telling women that they should be celebrating themselves. It gets worse. I'm just going to keep playing.
Our parts. Wilder says,
As a Black woman, you just sometimes are weighed down. And so when we come into this space once a week, we're able to just kind of forget about those things.
Destiny Hoskins is 22.
As a Black woman, you're weighed down. So when you come into this federally funded space, you forget about those things. You forget about what? Being Black? So the government cures you of your of your Blackness? Is that what you're trying to convince me of? There are plenty of Christian what are they called, crisis birth centers or something like that, with doulas and midwives and women in ministry who are speaking and ministering life into these young mothers, who are encouraging them all the while throughout their pregnancy. Not saying that you should celebrate yourself, but teaching and preaching the love of Christ to these mothers, because that's where real peace comes from. Real peace comes from Christ, not from celebrating yourself. That's the difference between the religion of the state and the religion that God deems worthwhile, worthy. Which is interesting, because there is a verse in the Bible that says, religion that God deems worthy is to look out for the orphans and the widows in their time of need, and to not allow yourself to be defiled by the world. That's very interesting. What is that verse? I'm going to actually bring that up. Let's see here. Bear with me one moment, guys. I'm going to bring up that verse real quick. It might be quicker if I do it from my phone. Okay. Let's see. Religion. God. Orphans and the widows. I used to know this one off the top of my head. All right, so James 1:27 is a verse. All right, let's try to blow that up. Okay, here we go. Yeah, I'm going to show this to you all. James 1:27. Let's share my screen. All right. In the English Standard Version, religion that is pure and undefiled before God the Father is this: to visit orphans and widows in their affliction, and to keep oneself unstained from the world. Religion that is pure and undefiled before God the Father is this: to visit orphans and widows in their affliction, and to keep oneself unstained from the world. That's very chilling, isn't it? Because while you have these crisis pregnancy centers, these Christian-oriented crisis pregnancy centers, who are, again, preaching the love and mercy of Christ to these young mothers who were abandoned by their boyfriends or what have you, because they themselves, these young women, were brought up in a culture that celebrated degeneracy, that celebrated premarital sex, that celebrated debauchery and degeneracy. They were brought up in that culture, and they gave in, and they may have laid down with their boyfriend. Boyfriend got her pregnant. He, skipped town, and now she's left with this bun in the oven. And culture, the same culture that taught her degeneracy and debauchery, is also telling her, well, you should abort it. You should abort it. But, she has enough consciousness left to say, I just don't feel right about that. So she seeks help. She finds a pregnancy crisis center. These young women who are rooted steadfast in the word of God are preaching and teaching the love of God to these young women, because they're confused. They're afraid. They don't want to give up that life. And the culture is desperately telling them, kill it. Get rid of it. You only live once. You have your whole life ahead of you. You still got to go to school. You still got to get a job. You still have to be a career woman. You still have to be number one. That's what the culture is teaching you. The culture is trying to stain you. The world is trying to stain you. And so what the women in the pregnancy crisis centers are doing is exactly what James 1:27 defines as religion that God finds acceptable. That's what the women in the pregnancy crisis centers are doing. Meanwhile, what the worldly religions are doing, which are federally subsidized by the government vis-a-vis your tax dollars, what they're doing is trying to stain the woman all the more. It's saying, celebrate yourself, celebrate you. It's all about you. Celebrate yourself. Celebrating yourself is how you got in the situation you're in the first place. Putting yourself first is how you got in the situation you're in the first place. Indulging in self, indulging in the desires of the flesh is how you got where you are in the first place. And so when the world, which is funded by the government, by the federal government, tells you to double down on self, what makes you think that any good can come from that? Genuinely, what makes you think that any good can come from that? And I want to bring it back to the men. After all, the title of tonight's show is Men Must Be Greater Than the State. If you are a young man and you saw it fit to lay down with this woman and get her pregnant with no plans whatsoever to care for that child, shame on you. You ought to repent, but shame on you. Now, I'm not here to condemn you. Now that I said the shame on you part, now that I got that out of the way, there is mercy awaiting you in Christ. That's a free gift from God. That's yours for the taking. But you need to take responsibility. You just do. Getting a woman pregnant for another reason than you wanted to get your rocks off that night. Creating another person for another reason than you wanted to get your rocks off that night. And then completely abandoning and forfeiting your responsibilities that the state has to then step in, that the government has to then step in. You ought to be ashamed of yourself because you're a fool. But again, I'm not here to condemn you. I have to talk to you kind of rough because I doubt that anybody has talked to you in a firm way and told you about yourself, because this generation doesn't do that. Again, remember, there's no such thing as shame anymore. That word is completely out of the vocabulary in Western culture these days. So because you don't know what shame is, you don't know how to compute when you're doing something that's unbecoming of a man. So first of all, you need to know the error in your ways. You also then need to know that there's forgiveness and that there's mercy, and that repentance is also a gift. And then from there, you need to know that you have responsibilities that you need to take up as a man. There's no reason why your girlfriend, first of all, she shouldn't be your girlfriend. She should be your wife. That's a different story entirely. But there's no reason why she should be at a pregnancy crisis center. I mean, pregnancy crisis centers are great for the ministry that they're doing, but bro, there's no reason she should be there. You should already be getting the nursery ready. You should already be looking at ways to get out of that low-paying job and developing a skill that you might then go and earn more money to support this woman and the child that you created. You should get off of TikTok, get off of Instagram trying to make videos to please people who you will never meet. and focus on your family. That's what you ought to do. Nobody else is going to tell you that. The world is not going to tell you that. These federally funded organizations aren't going to tell you. They're just going to tell you to celebrate yourself. That's all they're going to tell you. But I'm going to tell you the truth. You need to man up and take responsibility. Stop playing games. Your grandfathers and great-grandfathers, by the time they were 12, 13 years old, they were already working. They were already trying to figure out how to man up that they might then marry their bride and raise their family. And that's how you got here ultimately. And you're pissing it all away because you're trying to get your rocks off. So not only do you lack the confidence it takes to be a man of responsibility who's supposed to be protecting the gate, you're also a fool, eating, drinking, and being merry while Rome is burning. Shame on you. Shame on you. But I'm not here to condemn you because there's grace. You just have to open up your ears enough to listen to the wisdom and to basically take advantage of what it is that's being taught to you. Let's see here. Let's keep playing that video, shall we? Where'd it go? Here it is.
Elena Rivera of KERA reports on.
She directs the university's Healthy Start program. It's one of 5 federally funded initiatives in Texas designed to improve health outcomes for people during pregnancy. Black women are 3 times as likely to die from a pregnancy-related cause than their white counterparts. Wilder says,
As a Black woman, you just sometimes are weighed down. And so when we come into this space once a week, we're able to just kind of forget about those things.
Destiny Hoskins is 22 and had her daughter Octavia 7 months ago.
It's been really good, especially like co-parenting and being young is like hard, but coming here and give them like a little bit of it and them not being judgy, but giving me like good advice on like what to do.
So far, Hoskins.
That poor girl. Again, culture, the world, blackness, these things teach you that anytime somebody tells you the truth, they're being judgy, right? Anytime somebody tells you the truth, they're being judgy. And so we go out of our way to circumvent having to take responsibility for our own actions. The reason why she's at this federally funded organization who's just going to tell her, first and foremost, to abort the baby. And if you're not willing to abort the baby, okay, well, here, come to my class where I teach you how to celebrate yourself and to do meditation. Again, these things smack of a religious tinge. But I thought there's supposed to be a separation of church and state. That's what you told me. You told me that all throughout the 20th century. That's what you told me. You came to schools and removed 10 Commandment plaques because you said that there's supposed to be a separation between church and state. You sicked the ACLU on high school football teams for praying before the games. That's what you did. So how do you go from telling me that there's supposed to be a separation between church and state when Christianity is involved, but then you turn around and you get these federally funded secular organizations that are doing their own version of religion and misleading these young folks? What they're doing is a religion. Don't get it twisted. But because it's not an organized religion, they get to be funded by federal tax dollars. You see how this works?
Has learned about meditation and had questions answered by the programs.
She learned about meditation. Again, if you don't think this is a religion that's funded by the government, then you're crazy. Just utterly crazy. So this young black, and I didn't even catch that part originally. This young black woman who's apparently pregnant went to this organization, which is funded by the government, and they're teaching her meditation and how to celebrate herself. Play that back.
And so when we come into this space once a week, we're able to just kind of forget about those things.
Destiny Hoskins is 22 and had her daughter Octavia 7 months ago.
It's been really good, especially like co-parenting and being young is like hard, but coming here and give them like a little bit of it and them not being judgy, but giving me like good advice on like what to do.
So far, Hoskins has learned about meditation and had questions answered by the program's nurse midwife.
I definitely learned a lot about self-care. Self-care is a rare thing. Like, you have to squeeze it in, but like they taught me how to make time.
Bonnie Cook directs Mental Health America of Greater Dallas. She thinks that's due to compounding layers of stigma, fear of being seen as a bad parent, and fear of asking for help.
We've got our brain playing tricks on us that we're not worthy of getting this help because we should be able to do it by ourselves.
Cook says the state should be doing more.
I have not quite seen.
There it is. The state should be doing more. You're already getting federal funds to preach nonsense. You're not basing what you're teaching in any objective moral basis. You're at all. You're teaching your own kind of pseudo religion to these young women, and you're getting all the federal funding you need to do it, but that's still not enough because you're saying that the state should do more. You're teaching young women meditation and celebrate yourself, things that the world is already teaching them, but you want more. The state should be doing more.
Texas put their money where their mouth is when it comes to making sure that we've got maternal mental health and babies taken care of.
This legislative session, Cook's looking at bills like HB 12, which would...
So this woman said that the state should be doing more. And in doing so, they'll be putting their money where their mouth is when it comes to protecting women's mental health and protecting babies. She wouldn't be saying such a thing if men were men and took responsibility of their own affairs, took responsibility of their own actions. If men were men, if men resolved to be greater than the state, our women wouldn't have to go to such dumb classes where they're being taught a religion that's rooted in Satanism, in demonic ideology. Talking about manifestation and meditation and celebration of self, which celebration of self smacks of Tower of Babel vibes to me. Celebration of self smacks of serpent visiting Eve in the garden vibes to me. That's what that smacks of. Celebration of self. Over what? Putting self as number one. Over what? The first commandment is, I am the Lord your God. You shall have no other God before me, not even yourself. In fact, and the prerequisite to becoming a disciple of Christ is to deny yourself. In order for the new person to emerge, the old person has to die. And when the new person emerges, Christ becomes that new person's Lord. We talked about this the other day. A Lord, to be a Lord, to be the Lord, is to be an owner. This Lord is another word for owner. If Christ is your owner, you're not number one. You're just not. And it's funny how they take these words like self-care and mental health and all these things, which, from the surface seem harmless. Of course you want to, if you stub your toe, you want to make sure you treat that toe. If you cut yourself, you want to make sure you treat that cut. You want to make sure you get plenty of sleep at night so that you can be refreshed for the next morning. You want to make sure that you're eating healthy. You want to make sure, of course, self-care. But when you take that word, you politicize it, you make it a kind of tenet of your secular religion. It becomes this kind of idolatrous thing, right? Self-care sounds perfectly innocent, but when you see what they're doing with it, you begin to realize how it's a part of their religion, and you and I are paying for it. I know I keep beating that dead horse, but it's important that you you understand it.
Especially like COVID is a rare thing. Like you have to squeeze it in, but like they taught me how to make time.
Bonnie Cook directs Mental Health America of Greater Dallas. She thinks that's due to compounding layers of stigma, fear of being seen as a bad parent, and fear of asking for help.
We've got our brain playing tricks on us that we're not worthy of getting this help because we should be able to do it by ourselves.
Cook says the state should be doing more.
I have not quite seen Texas put their money where their mouth is when it comes to making sure that we've got maternal mental health and babies taken care of.
This legislative session, Cook's looking at bills like HB 12, which would extend postpartum Medicaid coverage up to a year after giving birth. Wilder hopes this model is something other organizations can adopt to guide Texans through the highs and lows of their first year of parenting. I'm Elena Rivera in Dallas.
Elena Rivera? Okay, get that mess off my screen. So will the real men please stand up? Genuinely, will the real men please stand up? We are a culture going quickly downhill very fast with lightning speed. That's what we are. And I try not to be one of these creatives who use my social media platforms or YouTube merely to get angry at what the world is doing. I mean, the thing is, I'm not surprised that the world is going to do what the world does. I'm simply not surprised by that, right? You'll never see me make these kind of reaction videos to, can you believe that the trans community did this? Can you believe that the drag queens did? Like, no. I mean, you can't expect people who don't know God to act as if they don't know God, or to act as if they do know God. You can't do that. It just won't work. Again, we're tasked with the privilege, frankly, in the role to be the light and the salt of the earth. And that's what we're tasked with. And as such, I mean, there's a certain way that you have to go about things, but at the same time, the reason why I'm calling this out specifically as it relates to Nikki Giovanni and her ideology, and specifically as it relates to what you saw or heard just now on NPR, the reason I'm calling this out for those of you who are believers is so that you know what's going on in the culture and you know how to address it. You know how to protect your home from it. You know how to step up within your respective community, your local elections, your local city council meetings, your local whatever. You know how to stand up against this kind of thing creeping into your domain, right? Because God gave you dominion over the earth. He did. And we can choose to completely disengage, completely, throw in the towel and just completely walk away from our responsibilities and say, you know what, so long as I'm a believer, I'm good. I don't care about anything else. You can choose to do that, or you can choose to be a man in your own community. Not everybody's going to come to repentance. Not everybody's going to see things the way you see them. Not everybody is going to even listen to what you have to say. That's fine. But will you be faithful in standing up in defense of truth, in defense of what's right? I can't even talk tonight. That's your role as a man. That's your role as a man. And again, I don't consider myself, and I know for a fact that I'm not a manosphere content creator. That's not who I am. You'll never see me on here with a bunch of women, telling them about themselves and all this. Like, you'll never see me on that or doing any of that. You'll never see me like Kevin Samuels having women call into the show so I can, give them a smackdown. Although that did make for good entertainment, because you got to see this kind of modern woman ideology juxtaposed against a lot of the things that Kevin Samuels were saying, which for all intents and purposes was rooted in objective truth and facts. So that was interesting to see, but you can only take so much of that, right? The reality is that we as believers have a specific task in society. And 21st century Western culture is a very interesting case study. It's a very interesting situation, and how we move and act and exist in this society is very important. Either we can be sucked into it, or we can be prophetic in it. And I choose to be prophetic in it. People ask me all the time, Chad, why isn't your YouTube channel more popular than what it is? Part of it is because I just don't post as much, and I'm not really as active on here as others are. But the other part of it is, I'm not naive to the fact that the things that I'm saying are not popular in this culture. But rather, whether there's 3 people watching this right now, or whether there's, 1,000, it doesn't matter to me. I do have an obligation, however, to use the voice that God has given me for good. And the fact is, when it comes to these hollow and deceptive philosophies, which are being taught in our schools, which includes Christian children, children of Christian parents, I know that a lot of you who are Christian parents have your children in these schools. I know that a lot of you may be naive to what's going on in your schools. Namely, that some of the teachers at your schools were taught in their colleges and universities by the likes of Nikki Giovanni, who I played earlier. Are we asking the appropriate questions when it comes to open house at do they even do that anymore? I don't know. But are we asking the proper questions of the people who are going to be educating our children for a year? Where did you go to school? What were some of the things that you were taught at your school? What's your philosophy on this? What's your philosophy on that? Oh, you're teaching English? How are you going to approach it? Are we asking the appropriate questions? Or are we just wholesale giving up our children to the state by way of the educators to do with what they please? It's to indoctrinate how they please. And meanwhile, we don't want to indoctrinate because we want our children to grow up and be free thinkers. Well, if you're not equipping them with the things, the true things of reality, if you're not equipping them with the truth, if you're not equipping them with a strong, solid moral basis, how then can they navigate and decipher the truth from the error once they come of age? I can't talk, guys. I'm gonna actually have to hop off tonight. I'm gonna actually bring this to a close, but I wanted to get into the comment section and answer any questions that you guys have. I haven't even looked at the comments in about an hour. I've just been rambling, but I can tell that my thought process is declining as the hour grows later. So if you have any questions, put them in the comment section. If not, then I am going to call it a night. Thank you, Angel Wings, for hanging out with me tonight and for moderating. You always do such a wonderful job. I really appreciate you. Jambalaya Talks. Yeah, you missed it, but thankfully it's on YouTube, so you can play it back. We dabbled in a couple of topics this evening. Not too shabby. Let's see here. Let's see. I am Lens. Yeah, thank you all for rocking with me this evening. I was gonna have I had originally asked Chuck to come hang out, but his work schedule is a little crazy this week, so he wasn't able to come hang. But yeah, guys, do look out for us this Sunday. We go live every Sunday. Myself, Blanche Robinson, Chuck Littleton, and Keisha King. Our show's called Cutting Through the Culture. We talk about a whole variety of different things. It's deep, it's intellectual, it's hilarious. It's, a good 3 hours of your time. I am going to actually turn the show into a podcast, so you will be seeing that on whatever platforms you listen to podcasts here pretty soon. If you haven't already, I hope you'll purchase one of our Worship God, Not Man t-shirts. You can go to my website, chadojackson.com, and you can find those shirts there. Those shirts are packaged and delivered by yours truly. For those of you who ordered them already, when they come, if they're not folded properly, don't judge. I'm not great at folding clothes. But, a friend of mine locally here, he has a screen printing business. He makes all the shirts. I package them. My wife and I, we package them and then we deliver them. So that's how that works. So anyway, I don't see any questions in the comments. So let's see. Have you fixed the call-in feature? Stimulated students, happy to see you here, man. I've watched a few of your videos and you're one bright dude. So thank you for rocking with me this evening. I was actually working on the call-in feature tonight. I have a mixer and I have a lot of stuff right here in front of me. I would tilt the camera down and show it to you all, but camera's all the way over there and I'm over here. So no, I haven't fixed it yet. I need to figure out how, I have a phone number, I have the capability. I just need to figure out how to actually wire it in such a way to where when callers call in, they can hear the show, like everybody on the show and not just me, and everybody who is on the show can talk back to the caller. So there's a way to do it. I've just been so busy that I haven't had the opportunity to really kind of, figure it out. So I do apologize for that. That's one of the things that I'm wanting to get fixed to make the show an experience for you all, because I really do want for you all to engage with this content. So we'll figure that out and get it for you guys. Let's see here. I am Lynn's, looking forward to it. Let's see. Stimulate students. Is that Duncanville Public Education? Duncanville. Where do you get Duncanville from? I was actually educated in Mansfield. Went to Mansfield Public Schools. So, let's see here. All right, guys. I'm actually going to hang it up. So thank you all and have a wonderful night.